You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech, where we watch YouTube videos, of TikTok videos, of Twitch streams, of Instagram Reels, of Spotify Canvas videos made by automated video services for songs written by robots who have millions of followers on Triller, where we discover our favorite tracks on meditation apps while working out staring at smart mirrors that have augmented reality that make us look so muscular that lifting weights is easier than zoning out on yet another Zoom call. I'm your host, Dimitri Vitsa. I'm also the founder and CEO of Rock, Paper, Scissors. We are a PR firm that specializes in music tech, and we are bringing you episodes of Music Tectonics about Music Tectonics, the conference. And I'm excited today because I've got with me Noah Becker, the CEO of AdRev. He's going to be at Music Tectonics. Noah, how's it going?
Oh, very well, Dimitri. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're in from the LA area, yes?
That's correct. I'm in Mar Vista, and I'd like to apologize in advance because there's some really loud construction going on across the street, but I'll be doing my best to cover my mic in between bouts of speaking.
Well, we don't hear too much of that, so don't worry too much. So AdRev's a digital music rights management, technology, and services company that helps rights holders find money, right?
That's a fairly good summary, yes.
And you're on a mission to change the conversation about the value of music on web platforms and apps. And you'll be at Music Tectonics. That'll be one of the things you're talking about when you're there. Why is this your cause, Noah?
Well, it's one of many causes, but I think probably the quickest anecdotal summary or theoretical anecdotal summary I could go through is, for example, you have an influencer on Instagram or TikTok, or pick your favorite platform where you love to consume social media influencer content. And that influencer, influencers get paid big dollars to run story campaigns, et cetera, et cetera. Stories now have a really expansive selection of music within them from recent Facebook licensing deals, and that's great for the users. But if, for example, an influencer gets $10,000 to run a branded media campaign in a story and just grab some music out of the Insta feed, that's fantastic for the user and the influencer who's getting that 10 grand. The story feed streams, I'm not sure if they'll even equate to any Facebook UGC income, but if it is, it's literally like pennies on the thousands of views is what we're currently seeing.
Wow.
So in traditional media, somebody who's doing a $10,000 commercial placement might pay anywhere from 10 to a couple $100 to maybe much, much more, depending on what sort of music they wanted to use to get a sync license to use in that branded media placement, right? So I'm just a little bit concerned that we're going to kind of denigrate the value of the sync licensing space, which is one of the last remaining bastions of hope for independent artists and composers to actually eke out a decent living wage. And it's also just really lopsided in terms of the influencer income that they see from the brand deal, doing a dance or promoting a product to some fantastic music that fits the theme of the plug. But the musician is getting $0 out of it. And again, in traditional media, this would not be the case. So, and I know we're not in traditional media anymore, and I don't want to sound like an old fogey saying, yesterday it was like this, and we got to fix that. But we do need to temper the course and sort of remodulate user expectations on platforms of what they should and shouldn't be expecting to be able to do with music. And I know that the music that's available in most of these apps is quote unquote for non-commercial uses, but you and I both know that that's just sort of a ridiculous fallacy, that there's not a tremendous quantity of commercial uses happening with this, for the most part, free to use music contained in some of these apps.
So what you're saying is kind of the message from a lot of these web platforms, social media platforms and so forth, social video and so forth, is sort of like, oh, well, this is kind of like icing on the cake. This is fans making videos that need a little bit of sound to go with it. But what you're saying is there's this whole other tier of commerce that's happening that is not technically connected to the way the music's getting licensed or used.
Well, yeah, like I said, I think I'm not an attorney. First of all, I only play one on podcasts and email
Hey, well,
occasionally.
this is a podcast. Great.
There you have it. As soon as there's some transactional revenue, something is no longer a personal use.
Right.
That's for me. That's
But my point, Noah, is that there are transactions related to the music that happen within the platform, and then there's transactions that are happening sort of outside.
that's correct. Again, so so we're overlapping points. Basically, I'm saying these are non-commercial uses. The music is being used, quote unquote, as intended. If you ask someone on the music licensing side of the platform, right? What I'm saying is that it's being used as intended. It's also being abused as intended, I guess would be my point, right?
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And that Instagram example you gave is one. Are there other examples of how this is occurring right now?
Well, TikTok's another fantastic example. So there's just not a lot of actual music-related transactional revenue happening on platform from TikTok music licensing deals. There's an insane quantity of revenue changing hands off platform in these branded deals. Again, where kids are doing dances or performances or acting things out, and to music that is very on point for whatever the messaging is, et cetera, et cetera. And 5 to 6 figure transactions for single posts.
Gotcha. So it's not specific to any one platform. It's more the fact that if the platform does create this non-commercial use of music, there's this parallel universe where these other layers of commerce are happening that kind of are not really addressing the use of the music.
They're not being
license.
addressed from a copyright perspective and from a copyright valuation perspective. So, and again, this is just sort of the way of the world. But I was just on a copyright office panel. Last week, and I was speaking on there's a part of Copyright Act 512 DMCA that has language related to the potential for standard technical measures to have an impact in the DMCA to help enforce the takedown and notice and takedown, etc. One thing I kept arguing over and over, and I'll argue this until the cows come home. It's that the user groups that are using the music, those that I just described, I don't think that they're abusing music wittingly. I don't think that an influencer is thinking to themselves, "Oh, I'm going to use this music and make 10 grand and I'm going to stick it to the musician who made the music." That thought doesn't even enter their mind, and that's okay. It doesn't need to. But my point is that is a synchronization use, okay? And sync, again, is this bucket or sink of money that's a really good source of income still for the music industry, and particularly for independent writers, composers, and artists. So we need to recalibrate user understanding. That is the first and foremost issue currently in the music and media marketplace. If we're going to keep licensing to these platforms, keep cutting, multi-$100 million, a couple $1 billion deals with a single platform to sort of wash their hands of any guilt for copyright abuse for forever and all time. I think we need to do a little more heavy-handed work on forcing those platforms to educate some of their user base about what exactly they're doing with the music and what traditional rights they do and do not have as a user on the platform, because there's a massive gap in knowledge, understanding, and practical use of copyright in real life, and then copyright on OSPs, online service provider platforms, right? So if I know all of my copyright understanding from YouTube's rules, I know F all about copyright. I don't understand it at a fundamental level. These are the same user groups that the government, the Copyright Office, insight groups, sample to ask them how the DMCA is working for them. Well, and they say, "Oh, it's working terribly. I can't do anything I want with the music I like." And I'm sitting over here banging my head into a wall. It's you don't understand what you are allowed and not allowed to do with music in the first place. Why is anybody asking you? All of a sudden, influencers are expert on copy fraud and all these other hot button terms that YouTube and TikTok and other generations have spawned about copyright. And I'm back here. I support creators too. We've got a bunch of creator clients that work with us at AdRev. Many of them are also musicians who fundamentally understand these things and who will go and pay real money to get good music in their videos, et cetera, et cetera. So I digress. But the value of music is being firstly, just sort of eviscerated by lack of understanding in the user group. It starts there. And the user group understanding comes from the platform's policies and rules. So if we started there, we might actually be able to course correct this thing. But if we don't, my fear is that in 10, 15, 20 years, we don't have a whole lot of good independent music to listen to because nobody in their right mind is going to spend any time making it because there's not a dime to be had from the industry unless you're a mega superstar or a mega company that can benefit from these sort of single platform mass payout deals.
It's funny. My 11-year-old son did a project the other day for school where he made a video about early explorers to America, not his choice topic, but one that was assigned to him. And as soon as he added music, the whole project came together. It was just, for me, it was such a reminder of just how music goes with everything. And we see that in all the types of platforms that you're talking about. We also see it in the explosion of music in sync over the last 5+ years. Is it obvious to say that music goes with everything? I mean, just broadening out for a minute, we'll come back into the issue here, but what makes music so relevant to so many creative projects and platforms?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I could answer it from a number of different perspectives. I think you could start with the sort of modal concept of music and the different chord progressions and how you arrange different chord progressions within different scales are known to have scientific impacts, on the human mind that correlate to happiness, sadness, etc.
Right, the emotional state.
Exactly. I mean, I became obsessed with music at a super young age. My grandpa on my dad's side passed away, I think when I was 5 or 6. Totally natural, all good. Guy was like 92. He had a great run.
Yay.
But I was super sad. It was my first loss. I was a child. And we lived out on a kind of like rancher kind of house. Not rancher, actually. It was 2-story. But old, like on a bunch of acreage outside of town. Country style stuff outside of a small town called Chico. And we had one of those funky 70s intercoms in the house. And it had an AM FM radio built into the intercom too. In every room. They would just play out the intercom, the crappy little intercom
speaker.
3-inch speaker there. But yeah, I went in there and I was really upset. And I remember I ran in my room and I turned on some radio station, and it must have been some classical station. Some rendition of Canon in D, Pachelbel's Canon in D was playing. And I was just really moved by it. And it just made me feel comfortable. And I never forgot that moment. And I just sort of became obsessed with the impact that music can have on myself personally, and then course, by extension, other human beings. Why it's so important in media, I think, is that more scientific reason that I told you about. Why are there always big storm drum? That's a plugin for digital audio workstations. Big trash can style, massive sounding orchestral drums in all the big epic movie trailers that you see, because as far as the moment that's happening in the trailer at that specific time, editors and composers know it's a great way to build energy and tension, and things like that. And so this goes every which way, though, in terms of video. I really feel it does. Vine being that first short form platform that really spun out of control for copyright owners, at least on the music side, because there really was. There was just so much short form, let's face it, copyright infringement happening at a massive scale level. And again, a lot of transactional dollars happening. But if you go back to the Vines, and if you go into the TikToks currently, you go into the Reels on Instagram, you mute the music and you tell me what the heck is going on. None of it's going to make any sense. The music is an absolute categorical imperative to the success of these videos, right?
Yeah.
The success of these viral moments. And we are giving it an on par value against this influencer of like 1 to 10,000 on average,
Mm-hmm.
let's say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it just, I don't understand it. And I do understand it. Education. Again, the kind of where it all begins.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. I mean, the other thing about music that's interesting, especially as video editing and montage and this whole idea of just turn on your camera and start shooting comes together, the songs pretty much unite the whole project. They have that emotional reaction that you're talking about, and then they also create this seamless piece while the video's jumping around, whether it's because somebody's hands moving or because they're making edits using in-app tools or third-party tools or whatever. The audio gives it that, like, it ties it all together, right? And so the music has a strong role to play in this video-centric movement of creation.
Oh man, I got goosebumps and the hairs on my neck are standing up. I mean, particularly when you start to talk about long form video, movies, documentaries, the music is the creative glue. It's the highway that the movie travels on. It's the rails that the movie stays on.
And in some ways, I like what you said about the science side of it, because in a way, the video itself is the literal translation of what you're seeing, what you're supposed to know about the story. But the music kind of operates on the emotional. It's telling the emotional storyline in a way that you're not necessarily seeing with your eyes. You actually have to hear it to feel it.
Absolutely. And cut how things are cut and the music that's used have an absolutely massive impact on sort of the output emotion for the audience. Have you ever seen, there's a wonderful example of this. Have you ever seen the Top Gun edit where Maverick and Iceman are like have a lover's tension, if you will, as per this edit?
Huh.
It's just hilarious because it takes all the really close cut scenes of them when they get up in each other's face, but it edits it in such a way and adds more of a romantic underscore to it that you're like, oh yeah, this must be a love story about these two fighter pilots. This is super cool, but we know it is Top Gun, right? So anyway, the point being, how you cut and how you edit and what music you choose can really do what you just said. They really do start to bring the emotional significance to the story.
Right. I just realized the perfect explanation of what we're talking about as you were talking about the Top Gun thing, which is that kind of semi-silent version of Dancing in the Street with David Bowie and Mick Jagger. Have you seen that video?
Yep. There's a bunch of there's a lot of fantastic examples of this out there.
I mean, that's a music video, so that's a little bit different. That's kind of cheating to make the point, but it does make the point.
100%.
All right. So what's happened in the last year or so, going back to kind of you came out of the gate strong there, Noah, but what's happened in the last year or so that's changed this conversation, that's kind of bringing what you're talking about up to the surface?
I can tell you, for me personally, I started to get involved in some of the Washington lobbying activities surrounding copyright. And, there is, I can't get into it in too much detail, but there's definitely sort of centrifuge of attention on YouTube, and which I find ironic because I think YouTube, its system has its misgivings, but overall, I think they've done a really excellent job of giving copyright owners and creators both the flexibility they need to sort of interact in an ecosystem, and everybody can do a semi-reasonable job of maintaining the value of their rights. That again breaks down at the super independent level, unfortunately. But yeah, getting in the Washington circle and hearing a lot of the heat around YouTube, but feeling how I feel about the Facebook licensing deal that started, 3 or 4 years ago, and they just got re-upped. And I'm a composer, producer, writer, a label proprietor, sometimes recording artist. I have a few different accounts. I have an old label with InGrooves, and then my new stuff's with Dashco. So I see my little Facebook UGC money trickling in, and I'm also obviously an expert on YouTube UGC revenue, since that's one of the really pillars that AdRev hangs its hat on, is admitting YouTube. And the Facebook money at current is like in the 1/100th on the pro rata view amount. So, and again, Facebook never really, they've been in the wind for 2 decades on this stuff, right? So YouTube got out of the wind and got in the woods, if you will, deep in the woods now with Content ID pre-2010, right? And that was based on the nature of the platform. It's a heavy duty, rich media platform, audiovisual, yada, yada, yada. But Facebook's no different. They've been doing the same stuff for a really long time. Can't remember exactly when they launched Facebook video, but as soon as they did, they should have been licensed. Mm-hmm. And so they've, I think done a really good job with the press surrounding, their licensing efforts and things like that. I can tell you that once again, their licensing efforts are a pretty disturbing undervaluing of music copyrights, and also a walled garden in which you have to be of some sort of music type in order to participate in having your music protected and licensed on the platform. So these deals can be selected. Not only do they undervalue copyright, they oftentimes are highly selective about the rights that they want to or are willing to pay for a license to. This is because of notice and takedown and safe harbor. And until that changes, any platform can just sit back and be like, hey, we got this URL, and a copyright owner can go find their music and send us the link and tell us they own some music in it, and we'll take it down. And the scale at which any independent musician would have to do that work, firstly, is impossible. And then secondarily, if you don't own a fingerprint company, like AdRev owns a French company called Symbols. I know you're familiar with the PEX guys. They've got a solid fingerprint, BMAT in Spain, etc. So unless you are literally are one of those entities, a Symbols, a BMAT, a PEX, or work with one of them, which is costly, you have no capability to go find your music use in the first place. Mm. So it's just very disingenuous to keep hearing from platforms and from the copy left and that, or the notice and takedown. It's, what do you mean? There's plenty of opportunity for musicians to go deal with this. And everything is sort of structured in this way that it favors user groups and OSPs, and it skews very heavily handedly against musicians and film and copyright owners in general.
Can I back up just a little bit? Why has it been so hard to get new platforms to get licenses, or any platforms to get licenses for music?
That's like, asking Jeff, why doesn't Jeff Bezos just, give away half his stock and fix America? They don't have to. Nobody's forcing them to do it. So Safe Harbor allows them to kick back and kind of twiddle their thumbs on this stuff. And they will forever and all time. It's incredible to see what's going on with the European Copyright Directive. And what will be really interesting is when some of those directives go into enactment, there's going to be a tremendous legislative gap between how the EU sees these issues and how the Americas do. Mm-hmm. That will likely bring a reckoning to these platforms, whether they like it or not, because they are international, or they may have to throw up the gates and not let European user groups in. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but
do you think it's more likely that
Europe's taking this whole value of creativity a lot more seriously than we are? I can tell you that much.
Noah, do you think that it's more likely that there'll be this kind of firewall between where music is used, or do you think it'll be more likely that the same directives in Europe will start to impact how the American legal system handles this?
It's funny because you would think that it would somehow impact the American legislative system to kind of get on par, but things move so slowly here. And the European Copyright Directive has taken several years to framework and put into action. So either way, there's going to be a lag. But this is, if I may, sorry, I'm very verbose, and I know that I digress and get really tangential sometimes. But this is what it's really about for me, which is that, particularly in America, we really did used to have we used to have a very vibrant, creative middle class. I'll say that. Like, there was actually a way to sustain yourself as obviously touring musician's a hard one to sell right now, but
right.
Touring musician, a small film production company, making local spots. And look, I get it. I don't want to sound like grandpa complaining about kids on the lawn here. Technology's moved faster. It's cheaper to make and create video. Literally costs less money. Same with music, et cetera, et cetera. But when we don't prop up the value of independent film or the value of music, and by extension, independent music, we sort of reduce the incentive for people to be creative, right? To have a dream about making it. That sort of dreaming and inspiration also inspires real innovation in other industries and marketplaces. So if you really, I think if you sort of start to look at America over the last couple decades, there's one place that we've quote unquote progressed economically, which is to let these mega platforms take over our lives, make all the money, crush small businesses, crush medium-sized businesses. And I know this sounds like a big political wandering, but I am still talking about music because those platforms are the same ones that are devaluing music. Google, Facebook, and Amazon. Over and over. These platforms spend more money lobbying against copyright owners' rights and the value of copyright than they would if they just settled up and paid properly. Why? Because they don't have to pay properly, so they'd rather sit and fight their position and perspective so them and their shareholders can get more wealthy. So this is like a real, to me, a very, very much this is America issue, man. We want awesome music. We want great creatives to come out of this country. Creative industries are some of our greatest exports. It's an almost $2 trillion marketplace. It used to create 250,000 to 500,000 jobs a year in the early 2000s before social video really exploded. And before internet speeds got so fast that anybody could steal any digital media on the internet really easily. So these are all things that have happened right before our eyes over the last 10 years. And meanwhile, the industry's busy celebrating Spotify streaming, bro. Oh, the money's so good. What the heck is going on everywhere else? Nobody seems to care. And everybody's taking their handout money and hitting their bonus targets left and right, and they think they're doing great work. They're doing great work for themselves. We are really abandoning true creativity in the marketplace in favor of asset commoditization and dollar figures. And that will have a long-term detritus impact in our music economy and industry because people will not want to create it anymore. So it's, anyway.
Well, let me ask you. So, what's, as we talk about the kind of this issue of licensing with platforms, what's your advice to publishers and labels when those conversations are in process?
If you don't need the money, don't take the money. Keep hammering them until you get some sort of a settlement amount or licensing deal on the table that looks like it actually benefits not only you, but you and your artists or writers. Because non-attributable settlements from platforms that don't provide proxies, you and I know where that money is going, man. It's not going to artists.
So, what do you think would solve these problems in the future?
Well, that's was so cool about the opportunity to speak on the STM's panel, Standard Technical Measures panel. We're on the precipice, and not even on the precipice. We're like already down in the valley, hanging out, swimming in a world of technologically enabled audio and video identification tools that can operate at scale and provide real solutions for the marketplace. And I think if platforms, particularly US-based platforms, were more willing to be proactive about this, and to just sort of take a stand like, yes, we believe in the value of music. Shoot, sorry, we haven't done that to date. That we could at least get tools going, whether it's attribution engines or at-scale licensing engines, where people could interact and transact on platform and pay fair value for whatever they're doing with the music, sort of full stop, right? So there are some cute little solutions out there currently for YouTube, for example. I don't want to get too salesy, but I also don't want to mention any competitors. So I'll just say, for example, we have developed a product called Licensees, which if you have an e-commerce sync platform, you can sell sync licenses on your platform, have the user check out, enter some qualifiable user data, like here's my YouTube channel ID, right? Probably I can hear a user group in the background screaming, "You're gonna copy fraud my channel if I give you my channel ID." Sorry. But you get their channel ID, then you could run an API check against the channel, see how many subscribers they have, and then ping up a cost for that sync license, whether it's a needle drop, that would be a single use, or a blanket use forever and as many videos as you want. It would be perpetual, unlimited, et cetera, et cetera. Our endpoint can take that license information, wait for that user to upload the video, and then do some magical things in the background to make sure the user's claim gets released very, 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 very quickly. And then we also stuff the usage data in a database as well, so we can track performance. So I think, gosh, I could go down a whole other can of worms or a ball of wax on performance revenue. But yeah, so point being, Dimitri, there are solutions. We've built them. PEX has built them. BMAT's got them. If you combine all the vendors out there on the audio identification side and then throw them in a think tank with all the vendors out there on the somehow kind of cool way to handle at scale sync licensing on UGC platforms companies, like, we're here, we're capable, we're ready to rock, we can fix this stuff. We really can. We could recalibrate the value of music use in social video, I think in some time frame of perhaps 1 to 3 years. Really, very, very realistically, it would take, some good cash layout from some of the platforms, maybe some of the trade orgs, and some really, bare knuckled competitors to work together, but we could do it for the benefit of the industry. Now, again, none of this matters, and nothing that I'm saying matters until user groups understand the value. I still think that's job one.
Right. Gotcha. Well, great. It's really interesting to dive into this deeply with you to get your perspective really fleshed out, because it does take a little bit of explanation. There's a couple different layers of the conversation happening here. So that's been interesting. You're coming back out to Music Tectonics, the conference, again this year, taking place October 27th, 28th, as a supporter, as a speaker. And I'm curious, in addition to getting this message out there, what are you hoping to get out of being at the conference?
Personally, for my own volition, try to find more allies to work with on my DC related efforts. Obviously, meeting cool potential joint venture partners or strategic partners or potential clients, but really just trying to participate and think at a high level about the future of music and music technology. I'm really excited about my Lightning Talk, where I'm going to dig into some of this stuff. And hopefully be able to present it in a way that I will make friends, not lose friends. But yeah, just spreading my word of passion and desire to help, and that transitively of AdRev's, and hopefully we can meet some cool new folks. We're very aggressively looking into all market segments, in terms of expansion, global expansion, M&A. New product fits for our symbols technology on the fingerprint and metadata management side and things like that. And, I think at a very base level, hey, it's a good excuse to connect with some industry friends that I haven't seen in a really long time, and hopefully make some new ones, because
awesome.
Who couldn't use a little more actual virtual socializing instead of just virtual meeting after virtual meeting after virtual meeting. So, I'm really excited.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're working hard to come up with some systems at the Tectonics conference for this. You'll be able to do a live video chat with anybody you see there. So if you can go to the kind of the attendees list on the right-hand side of the screen. You'll be able to click on somebody, initiate a video chat. You can just say hello, whatever. Or if you're not sure who to talk to, we've got a networking section. You click on that. We'll randomly hook you up with somebody that's also networking at that time. It's kind of like chat roulette for music tech innovators to to connect. And so all of a sudden somebody will pop on the screen. It may be someone you know, it may be not. You get a few minutes, the timer runs out, you can connect or not, you can extend it or not, and then move on to the next person. So it has a little bit more serendipity, more of that feel. And we're actually working to firm up for our opening party and our closing party an avatar-based virtual space where we should have news of that coming soon, where you get to, maybe change your clothes, put on a hat in the virtual world, kind of like a Minecraft or Roblox type of experience, walk around and actually see somebody and then do an audio chat with their avatar in real time. So we're almost ready to lock that in. So I'm glad you mentioned those things you're looking for. Hey, before we wrap up, when you look at other emerging trends, I mean, we talked a deep dive about what you're talking about here, but other emerging trends in music innovation, what are some of the other things you're keeping an eye on? I always like to check in with our guests to share, because we always learn about new stuff. I've
got a pretty stacked deck of M&A targets right now.
So you can't say.
Yeah, so I don't want to get too much into it. I will just say that for me and my own volition and what I see as the future sort of sustainability of not only my org, but how you can continue to win, if you will. And it's not about winning or losing. It's about, creating jobs and making a healthy existence for yourself. But the way that we can continue to grow and serve the community would be to find more and constantly seeking out better ways to multiply revenue streams on existing assets. Mm-hmm. I'll just say that. And,
all right.
and then I'll be happy to fill you in under friend DA privately, because there's a plan in the headspace. But yeah, I think that, and it's not like I'm some rocket scientist to say that. You need to be able to provide to your clients, to your artists, to your writers, different ways to find new sources of revenue for them. And as per the premise of this talk, find new sources of revenue for them that properly value their genius. So.
Right. Got it. Well, I mean, it is pretty cool to see with your kind of family of companies now. You've mentioned Dashco, which is like a label distribution company that you're part of the same family of companies with. You're with AVL Digital, which owns CD Baby as well, which is itself is under the Downtown Publishing world. So you guys do have some really interesting kind of cross services, let's say, and you mentioned the merger acquisition world that you're becoming more and more active with. Your company yourself, as well as parent companies and so forth. A lot of interesting things happening there. So I guess we just have to keep reading the news headlines to find out once those things have happened and see what you were talking about.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, I am not the final word whatsoever. And there are plenty of stakeholders that I need to impart with the same excitement about different investments that I want to do. But yeah, hopefully we'll have some news kind of trickling around throughout 2021. Want to get involved in a few different things, but yeah, I'll be happy to fill you in a sidebar.
Well, awesome to have this chat. No, it's always great to get somebody who's got strong opinions about stuff, and if it's about valuing music, I mean, who's going to complain about that, right? So thanks for coming in. Is there anything else you want to shout out or share before we sign off for today?
I will like to say in advance a big shout to all my friends and longtime clients at Spirit Music Group who are celebrating their 25th anniversary this year, which is an incredible achievement in this crazy industry. So big shout to John Singer and Steven Singer, Joe Barino, Melanie over at Spirit Music Group, and all the other troopers. And you'll see our full pager and billboard coming up for them.
Awesome. Great. Well, Noah, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and thanks for coming out as a Supernova sponsor and partner for Music Tectonics. We're excited to have you.
Thanks for having me, brother. Always good chatting with you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. And thank you for listening to the Music Tectonics podcast. Please hit subscribe wherever you are, but also go over to musictectonics.com. Check out our conference page. Tickets are available. We've got some great speakers that we've already announced. Scott Cohen, the Chief Innovation Officer at Warner Music Group. Sherry Hu from Water and Music. We've got Roblox. We've got Feed.fm, who you've heard on this podcast. Syncfloor, many more. We're about to make a big announcement, so keep an eye on the news for that and sign up for the newsletter to keep posted on other speakers we have coming. And like I said, we're going to have lots of great networking and interactive ways of being involved once you sign up for the conference. Thanks for listening. We'll have more for you soon.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.